Hi guys, so I've got something fun to do here. What we're going to do is set up what's called an event source mapping between AWS Lambda and the Amazon Simple Queue Service, SQS. So what is an event source mapping? Well, it literally means that we're mapping Lambda to an SQS queue so that whenever an event occurs, Lambda will process that. So remember, we talked earlier in the course about the concepts of an event-driven architecture, and these are really important to modern applications. So what happens is our user, that's going to be us, we're going to place a message in an Amazon SQS queue. We'll do that manually. When the message hits the queue, it will then trigger an event in Lambda. And in this case, Lambda is actually polling the queue. So Lambda keeps checking the queue to say, is there any messages there? And when it sees there is a message in the queue, it's then going to process that message. And what it will do is it will process the message and then actually write an event to CloudWatch logs. So that's what we're going to do. Let's head over to the console. The first part to this is we need to go to AWS Lambda under Compute, and we're going to create our function. So what I'm going to do is create a new function. This one's going to be called SQS to SNS. It's going to be Node.js again, and we're going to create a new role with basic Lambda permissions, and we're going to actually modify this in a moment. So let's create the function. So our function's been created, and there's a couple of things we need to do. Firstly, we're just going to delete the standard hello world. And in Visual Studio Code here, I've opened up this file, so you'll find it in the course download, Code and Files, SQS, Event Source Mapping, SQS to Lambda. And again, we're just going to copy all of this code. We'll paste it into our function and click on Save. The next thing we need to do is we need to give it the permissions it needs to Amazon SQS. So if we click on permissions, and we can see our role here, and I'm just going to click to open this in a new window. This is the role that was created for us automatically, and we can see it's the Lambda basic execution role. Now if I just have a look at this role, we can see that it has the ability to write to CloudWatch logs, but there's nothing here about Amazon SQS. So what we do need to do is actually attach an additional policy to give it those permissions. And let's just type SQS, and we've got one here called the AWS Lambda SQS queue execution role. So let's select that option. That sounds correct. Click on attach, and we can just expand this and have a look at what it gives you. So here we can see the statement in JSON, and what it does is it allows these following actions. On the resource star, so any resource. So the action is SQS receive message, so we need to be able to receive messages from an SQS queue. Delete message, because once we've processed that message, Lambda will then delete the message from the queue. We need to look at the queue attributes, create a log group in CloudWatch logs, a log stream, and then put log events. So this one gives us everything we need. In fact, we don't need the original one, but I'll just leave it there. Let's carry on. So coming back to Lambda, we've actually finished in here for now. One of the things I want you to note is there's something called a trigger on the left here when you're in the configuration view. And there aren't any triggers, but when we create our queue, what's going to happen is a trigger is going to be created. So let's go and create the queue now. You'll find SQS under Application Integration. So we've got the Simple Queue Service. And what we'll do is we're going to create a queue. I'm just going to call this My Queue. And there's a series of configuration items here, but we can leave all of these at the defaults. And there's also a policy allowing access. So what we can do is we can just carry on and click on Create Queue. We don't need to modify any of those settings at this stage. And that's all there is to creating a queue. And now the queue is going to be ready for us to actually put some messages into it. We haven't actually configured our event source mapping yet. So what I'm going to do is here we've got Lambda triggers. I'm going to click on Configure Lambda Function Trigger, click on the drop down, and here's my Lambda function, and then click on Save. So that's it. That should have now configured the event source mapping between SQS and AWS Lambda. And let's go into the Lambda console and check. Back in my Lambda function, you can see that we now have a trigger. So the trigger is SQS. So that's actually everything. All there is now is to test this out. The way we're going to test it is we click on the send and receive messages here, and we can just put something in here. So let's put, this is a test message from SQS. and we can click on send message. And you can actually just repeat that. So you can click that a couple of times and that message will go into the queue. And down here you can actually poll the queue for messages so you can see whether there are any messages sitting in the queue. What we're going to do is go straight back to Lambda, and on the monitoring tab we're going to click on view logs in CloudWatch. You can see that we do have a log stream, so that's good. It means that things are happening. Let's click on the log stream and we can see our events here, and you'll notice the text. This is a test message from SQS, and that repeated 3 times. So all the 3 messages that we put in there were immediately processed by Lambda. So just to come back and visualize what we've done, we've added a message manually to an SQS queue. Lambda has polled the queue, it's found the message, it's run the function code that we have, and the function code has told it to write an event to CloudWatch logs. So these are really simple examples because all we're doing is just writing some text to CloudWatch logs. But of course Lambda can do anything that you write the code for it to do. So you can imagine the kind of applications you can write. So it's a very exciting service. Now we finished this lesson, but please leave everything in place because we're going to extend this architecture in the next lesson.